How are you, sir? How are you?
I
How
am
you how
truly
you managing during
I
this
am
time?
truly blessed and fortunate and happy that I am alive. It is a
Yes,
beautiful
yes,
day, and I know we have a lot of things going on in this world, but
yes.
we take it one day at a time and live each day to the fullest. That's my motto.
That's it. One day at a time. Each day when we wake up and we open our eyes, it's a beautiful thing. It definitely is a beautiful thing. And as you mentioned, we definitely are in some challenging times, and we are seeing a spectrum of leadership and a spectrum of leadership styles. You hold a lot of leadership roles yourself. What what does the outcome of good, excellent, honorable leadership look like?
For me, when you talk about leadership, leadership is
Mhm.
not about the individual who leads. Leadership to me is about the leadership skills that bring others up to the level that you are on. So when you are a true leader, you are able to inspire, ignite, and empower those who you are leading to come on the level that you are on. And when you can do that, that's a true sign of a leader. It's not always having the loudest voice and the greatest ideas. It's being able to cultivate, bringing people together, and showing them a path and giving them the power to be leaders themselves.
Mm. How can you think of a time, or share with us a time where you have instilled that in others, and you've then seen it demonstrated?
Well, one of the things with a lot of hats that I wear is one of the
Mhm.
organizations that I lead. I am the president of our NFL Former Players Atlanta chapter here in Atlanta. And when I took over the position, we were what we say in the red. We weren't doing very well. And the
Mhm.
team that I assembled to work with me were some guys that didn't really come to meetings, that weren't involved in doing a lot of things, but I saw they had great potential. And so
Mhm.
that was the kind of team that I wanted around me. And I figured if they were loyal to me and I could show them how you communicate, how do you handle yourself in a business meeting, not planning everything at the last minute, taking time to be thankful and just thanking people and showing them that's
Mhm.
the route that it takes for you to get over the hump to be more successful, not only in our NFL roles, but just in your
Mhm.
personal lives as well. So I've had two of my guys that were under me that have gone on and done some great things. They're still involved with the chapter, but they're just doing some
Mhm.
phenomenal things out there on their own. And it's just showing, and they're telling me, say, man, Bobby, it's so great. You have shown me what it's like to network. You show me what it's like to be around people. You show me that when I go to a meeting, I don't know anyone. I shouldn't stand in the corner. I need to go around and introduce myself, hold my head up high, stroke my shoulders back, and
Mhm.
show people that I belong.
Wow, wow. That is really huge, and that says a lot, because that's probably, I would dare say, that's probably a transition for a lot of the players. And I was thinking about this, and I'm glad you mentioned that our military population. I'm using this analogy. Our military population, when they transition from active duty to retirement, or transition from a combat environment to civilian environment, that can be a challenging transition. That can be a huge transition. That can be a challenging, transition. For some, it's seamless, but for others, it can be a challenge, because it's a different lifestyle. The adrenaline may not necessarily, or the force behind the adrenaline may not necessarily be there. And there's a small population of men and women, percentage-wise, if we look at this, nationwide, a small population of men and women who protect this country. So I use that analogy when I say that there's also, when we're looking at the big picture, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we look at the big picture, there's a small population of, when it comes to the NFL, there's a small population of men that are part of this former NFL fraternity. What would you want the public to know about that fraternity of men who have served on the football field, but their voice may not have necessarily been heard?
Well, almost in your comparison is that it's a small fraternity of men who've made it to a level that a lot of other men had the dreams of making it to. But when those playing days are over and the cheers of the crowd are gone, a lot of men are sort of lost because that support system is no longer there. So you're dealing with a lot of fragile men who've been athletes all their lives, and they've never been taught to function in society. So when we come out of the game, we're a little fragile, and we don't know a lot. And I think that's why you see a lot of guys being taken advantage of. Because once the game is over, you lose your support system.
Yes.
And now you have to figure it out on your own. Fortunately, now there's a lot of things that are changing within the ball clubs that they are providing this sort of help to these gentlemen, so they're not out there in the wilderness by themselves when the lights go off. So for the general public, you're dealing with some fragile men, but they're gentlemen, and they just have to take time to get adapt to the world. You know, you hear people say, "Well, how could they lose all that money? They made all this money at one time, and they've lost it all." There's a lot of vultures out there, and when you make a lot, folks hover around you. And you think these folks are really around you because they like you and they care about you. They're there just to get in your pocket. And even with our own family and friends, as former athletes or athletes, period, we feel we have an obligation to take care of our family, our friends, and everyone else that came up with us. So we don't know a whole lot, or we didn't know a whole lot. So it's very important that when you come across someone who's an athlete, is that they're fragile. Just same with military men. They're fragile. Military men have seen things that I will never see in my entire life. And they're fragile. And so when we treat them as human beings and not treat them like, oh, I don't care about you because you had this and I didn't have that. That's not the issue, because we're still human beings. And as far as people who truly care about you, I don't think I've met a football player that wouldn't do anything to help another human being, because it was a struggle to get to that level.
And I think that's so, and you know, as I was preparing for the show and thinking about this, and even conversations that I've had, you know, with a couple of players, and I really feel when I, you know, as I'm listening to you and as I was having conversations, my heart was really going out, because as a former military spouse, you know, I was Army wife for 23 years. As a former military spouse, you know, having observed that transition, that can be a lonely, frustrating place. You know, people see, you know, I used to use the analogy, you know, people see the happy homecomings on the tarmac on CNN, but they don't see behind the veil.
Yes.
You know, they don't see that first night home. I'm not saying all first nights home after active duty or what have you is difficult. I'm not saying that, but in some cases, they don't see that first night and the weeks after that and the months after that and the years after that, you know, having to make that transition. And like you said, when you spend your whole life, pretty much your whole adult life, and in the case of the players, you know, from a very young age, in one particular field, and that's all you know, and then you have to transition. That's huge, and I think, you know, that is something that the public really needs to hear and understand and appreciate.
Yes, because you know, I always say, at one point, I was your hero. And after the curtain fell, I'm not your hero anymore. Yeah. And now when I'm not your hero, you look at me totally different. As long as I was giving you that opportunity to cheer, to have fun, to do what you want to do in the stands to make you feel good. Then once that curtain fell, you look at me like, oh, you didn't do anything. Who are you? And so when you don't have that support system, and there's a lot of guys, and not just athletes, I mean, you look at military guys, and when you prepare for something, and you prepare and you prepare and you prepare and you make it, and then when it's over, now there's so much backlash of all these things, and we're not getting it. It's almost in that comparison of going to school and playing football. Being an athlete, you don't have the traditional college lifestyle, because once you study, everything else is athletics. So you don't have that traditional college where you're getting to meet all these people and all those things. Most of your friends are other athletes because you're in that struggle together, just like military guys. When they're through with military, most of their friends are military guys.
Right.
Because you have that connection, you understand. And then when you're a former athlete, one of the biggest downsides to being a former athlete is that every room you walk into, I don't want to talk about sports all the time. I have more of an intellect to me than athletics. We can talk politics, we can talk books, we can talk all kind of things. But for some reason, people want to always talk about sports. And you're minimizing my intellectual capacity. So when we are out there, I think it's just real important to have that understanding is that we don't want to be treated as no one differently. We're human beings. We're just human beings who happen to make it to somewhere that a lot of other guys didn't make it to, and now we have to transition into life. We want to be accepted, not as an athlete. It's great to use the athletics to get me where I need to go, but I still have intellectual properties that I'd like to share.
Yes, and there's so much more, to each player than their career in football. As huge as that is, there's still so much more to them than their career in football. What do you say to those who may criticize the salaries that athletes make? What would you say to those who criticize?
Well, my quick, smart answer I tell most folks,
go ahead.
Well, if you stop paying all the money, they wouldn't make it. Stop paying and going and buying jerseys, they wouldn't make all the money. Okay, but it's a career that you chose, just like some people choose to be a doctor, some choose to be this, some people choose to do that. Don't fault them because that's the going rate of the salaries today. I mean, you never hear anyone talk about the salaries that the entertainers make.
Right.
Never anyone's talking about, the entertainers and their longevity in their careers a lot longer. The average career of a football player is 3.7 years. That's average.
Yeah.
So if you want to give me $5 million for 2 years, I will gladly take it. And I think everyone out there would take those odds as well.
Yeah. Because you look at, I'm glad you made that point, because you look at the tenure, which you just mentioned, what, 3 to 5 years, maybe 3 years.
3.7 is average.
3.7. So that's the average. That's the tenure right there.
Yes.
Which is really no tenure. And then also look at the risk factor when it comes to injury.
Yes.
Within the military, the military personnel are paid, but then when they are out on the battlefield, there's such a thing as hazard duty pay.
Yes.
So you got hazard duty pay every Sunday afternoon or Monday afternoon or Monday night. That's hazard duty pay right there. So those are some things to that need to be considered. Those who are critics, I believe.